In the frozen darkness of a Soviet radar station north of Murmansk, Senior Lieutenant Dmitry Volkov stared at his screen with growing unease. The blip appeared for 3 seconds, vanished, then materialized 200 kilometers to the west. Impossible. Nothing moved that fast. Not even the Americans' vaunted SR-71. What you just saw was one file. The Cold War was fought in secrets like this. Cold War black files is where those stories resurface. Subscribe. New files declassified. He reached for the phone connecting him to Air Defense Command. His hand trembled slightly, though whether from the cold or something else he couldn't say. Across the Soviet Union, similar reports accumulated like snow in a blizzard. Radar operators saw ghosts, targets that shouldn't exist, and objects that defied the laws of physics and everything the Soviets understood about aerial warfare. They called it Nevidimka, the invisible one. The reports were classified, buried, dismissed as equipment failures or atmospheric anomalies, because the alternative was unthinkable. The alternative meant that somewhere, somehow, the Americans had developed something that could render the most sophisticated air defense network in the world completely blind. In the Nevada desert, 1,200 kilometers north of Las Vegas, a different kind of darkness gathered. The Tonopah test range existed on no public map. The men who worked there drove 90 minutes each way, forbidden from telling their families where they went or what they did. They built their lives around a secret that would reshape modern warfare, and the aircraft sitting in the hangar looked like it had been folded from a single sheet of black paper. No curves, no compromise. Every surface angled with mathematical precision to deflect radar waves away from their source. The F-117 Nighthawk wasn't designed to look good. It was designed to be invisible. Ben Rich, head of Lockheed's Skunk Works, walked around the prototype with the satisfaction of a man who had solved an impossible problem. The challenge hadn't been making an aircraft invisible to radar. That was just physics and geometry. The challenge had been making it fly. Conventional aircraft relied on curved surfaces, on wings that generated lift through smooth airflow. The F-117's faceted design fought aerodynamics at every turn. It wanted to fall from the sky. Only the fly-by-wire computer system, of making thousands of adjustments per second, kept it aloft. The pilot flew the computer flew the plane. In 1983, the first operational F-117 squadron achieved initial combat readiness. The Soviet Union had no idea it existed. American air superiority, the cornerstone of NATO defense planning, had just been revolutionized, and not a single shot had been fired. The technology came from an unexpected source. In 1966, a Soviet scientist named Pyotr Ufimtsev published a paper on predicting radar reflection from simple geometric shapes. The Soviet military dismissed it as purely theoretical, useless for practical application. The CIA translated it. Lockheed read it. And they understood what Ufimtsev himself perhaps had not fully grasped. If you could predict how radar waves bounced off geometric shapes, you could design an aircraft made entirely of shapes that bounce those waves anywhere except back to the receiver. You could make metal disappear. The first combat test came in 1989, Panama, Operation Just Cause. 2 F-117s dropped bombs on a field near the Panamanian Defense Forces barracks at Rio Hato. The Panamanians never saw them coming, never heard them, never knew they were there until the explosions lit up the night. But Panama was a preview. The real test came in Iraq, on the night of January 17, 1991, as the world slept and CNN prepared to broadcast the end of one era and the beginning of another. 10 F-117s flew into Iraqi airspace. Baghdad's air defenses were formidable. Soviet-designed systems, layered and redundant, hundreds of anti-aircraft guns, surface-to-air missile batteries, MiG fighters on alert, and the F-117S flew straight through it all, unseen, unheard. They struck command and control centers, communications facilities, air defense headquarters. The Iraqi operators fired at ghosts, shooting blindly into empty sky, while the real threats slipped past like smoke. For 43 days, F-117s flew over Iraq with impunity. They represented less than 3% of American aircraft in the theater, but struck more than 40% of strategic targets. Not a single F-117 was hit. Not one was even painted by radar. The Soviet military observers embedded with Iraqi forces watched in horror. This was their equipment failing. Their doctrine rendered obsolete. Everything they had built since 1945 to counter American air power was worthless against an enemy they couldn't see. But the F-117 was just the beginning. And in the same Nevada desert, at the same secret facility, an even more ambitious project was taking shape. Where the F-117 had sacrificed everything for stealth, the B-2 Spirit would have it all. Range, payload, stealth, the ability to strike anywhere on Earth, unseen, carrying enough ordnance to destroy a small city. The B-2 looked like something from another world. A flying wing with no tail, no fuselage, nothing but that smooth, unbroken curve from wingtip to wingtip. It was beautiful in a way the F-117 never was. Organic. Alien. Like a manta ray swimming through the sky. The engineering was beyond anything attempted before. The entire aircraft had to be built from radar-absorbent materials, special composites that would drink radar waves rather than reflect them. The engines had to be buried deep inside the wing, but their heat signature masked by the airframe itself. Even the paint was classified. Each B-2 cost more than $2 billion, the equivalent of a naval destroyer that could fly. Congress blanched at the price. The Air Force argued that 20 B-2s could do what 200 conventional bombers could do, without losses, without warning, without the enemy ever knowing they were under attack until the bombs fell. The first B-2 flew in 1989. The Soviet military intelligence services knew about it immediately. Spy satellites photographed it. Agents reported on it. They understood what they were looking at. They also understood they had no defense against it. In Moscow, the generals convened emergency meetings. They examined the problem from every angle. How do you shoot down what you cannot see? How do you defend against an enemy who can strike from any direction at any time with no warning? The answer was simple and terrible. You cannot. The Americans had won. Not through force of arms, not through superior numbers or better tactics. They had won by making the fundamental assumptions of Soviet air defense irrelevant. You cannot intercept what you cannot detect. You cannot target what you cannot track. The psychological impact went beyond military calculations. For decades, the Soviet Union had poured resources into air defense, missiles, radars, fighter aircraft, an interlocking network that was supposed to make Soviet airspace impenetrable. Billions of rubles, millions of man-hours, all of it rendered obsolete by American technology that the Soviets hadn't even known was possible. In 1991, as the Soviet Union collapsed, American intelligence officers examined captured Soviet documents about stealth technology. They found desperate attempts to develop countermeasures, proposals for new radar frequencies, infrared detection systems, acoustic sensors, all of it speculative, all of it years away from deployment. They also found something else. Evidence that Soviet radar operators had been detecting strange anomalies for years. Intermittent contacts that appeared and vanished. Targets that moved too fast or too slow. The reports had been filed, investigated, and ultimately dismissed. Equipment malfunction, atmospheric conditions, operator error. The Nevedimka had been real all along. The F-117 was retired in 2008. Its technology had been surpassed. Its mission absorbed by more advanced aircraft. But for 2 decades, it had been untouchable. One was shot down over Serbia in 1999, a statistical anomaly, a combination of luck and tactics, and a bomb bay door open at exactly the wrong moment. The rest flew and returned, mission after mission, invisible. The B-2 continues to fly, 20 aircraft, the most expensive, most capable bombers ever built. On any given day, one of them might be anywhere in the world. Over the Pacific, above the Arctic, circling over the Middle East, or sitting in a climate-controlled hangar in Missouri, waiting. The technology that made them possible didn't come from a crash at Roswell or reverse-engineered alien spacecraft. It came from a Soviet scientific paper that the Soviet military thought was useless. From American engineers who saw potential where others saw theory. From test pilots who flew aircraft that barely wanted to stay in the air. From billions of dollars and thousands of people who kept a secret. And from a fundamental truth about warfare that the stealth revolution proved beyond doubt. You don't have to be faster or stronger. You just have to be unseen. The ghosts were real, and they belonged to America.